Welcome back, you beautiful brave hearts all over the world, and thank you for joining us for this world event, Healers of the Faith, with Dr. Judy Mikovits. Now, she's going to be coming on in just a few minutes, and she's going to be introducing, yes, 18 world leaders, doctors, scientists, and people that are able to tell the story. Oh, yeah. How about her story? How about the Judy Mikovits story, where she is still looked at like a terrorist? Meanwhile, she was fighting for me. She was fighting for you way before you even knew what her name was. And this is what we call a Braveheart hero. And that's why we put this event on today, to celebrate her life and how she gave a good part of her life to people that she doesn't even know, because guess what? It truly is called unconditional love from the heart. And I want everyone to go into your heart and find that God spot. And I want you to ignite it, because together we have to awaken. This is a life-threatening, fun-filled adventure down here, but for only those people that are awake and understand that, guess what? You don't matter until you really matter. Now, before I bring Dr. Judy Mikovits on and we kick this off, one of the greatest events on, any platform that's happening today. Please give your family members a call. Let them know this is going on. This event is going to be going on from 11 a.m. until 6 o'clock p.m. tonight. That's Eastern Standard Time. You can go to bhnuniversity.com, let people know, and they can come on the Zoom link, And guess what? All of this, Healers of the Faith, will be up in the bhnapp.com if you don't get to see it, all right? It'll also be on Doc of Detox Telegram, where it'll be easy to find, okay? Now, I just want to go over a couple of things before we start with Healers of the Faith. Can we please have the slideshow work? Rafa, can you please help me with the slideshow? Now, everybody, I want you to understand that we are going to have all of these brilliant doctors on, for 20 minutes each and only, So you are going to get some of the most powerful healing information, And you're going to find out we're not talking about hope. We're talking about faith. That goes down to the core of your very being. And guess what? And then after today is over, I hope you're going to join us on Monday for a live Q&A with Dr. Judy Mikovits, June the 9th, Monday, 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time till 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, or until she goes, you know what? I think I've answered every question from all four corners of the world. And then Wednesday, another live Q&A on June the 11th from 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And you're going to find out today that, guess what? You don't have to just join her on this platform. You need to find out about her platforms. And if you love her, then you dive right in and you go for it, So if you want, you can join with the Q&As. bhnuniversity.com is where you're going to get your Zoom link. And if not, just stay here on one of our platforms, We have Healers of the Faith sale on, everybody, so if you want to check it up, it is up to 30%, all right? Go to docofdetoxstore.com, and I've never done this before, and we have 100 books in Australia, The Perfect Day Guide, 100 in the United States at our warehouse, and another 100 in Canada. You buy one, get one free, and this is one of the most important guides that you'll ever read. And if you've always wanted one, why don't you get one and give one as a gift, And don't forget, we will also have Gold Care coming on for a world event. And Judy will be on there as well, And so will 18 other different physicians and doctors. And you're going to hear the story about Simone Gold, on how she stood on the steps, And she told the government, as a medical doctor, we will not vaccinate, All right, now, do you know what kind of ovaries that took? How about stainless steel, all right? So understand that, everyone. You've got people out there fighting for you, and they don't even know you, but they love you anyway. And that's the God's truth, all right? So, again, Sunday, July the 13th, 11 a.m. to 6 p.m., same thing with Zoom links, same thing with Q&As. We'd love to see you there. And guess what, guys? If you want the whole history of what really went down and why your family got sick and why there are no diseases, there is injection and then infection. So it's infection by injection. And understand something, they're going to give you 1,000 different names, okay, and 1,000 different lies, and it's all about injecting us. Listen to me. God created this body. I never have a cold, I never have a flu, and I never get sick. First of all, I don't have any belief systems that support sickness and disease. And guess what? I am eternal. I am an eternal spirit. And you're going to talk to an eternal spirit in 1 minute. And she is one of the most beautiful people I've ever met in my life. So all I want to just say is, God bless everyone because of Judy Mikovits, who stood up for us. And here's her 4 books. And if you haven't read them yet, you better, because there's the history of corruption on this planet. Dr. Judy, how are you, my love?
Well, I'm very well today on this beautiful foggy Sunday morning in Ventura, California. Good to see you. And this is going to be a fun day. Fun day, fun day, fun day. This is Sunday Fun Day. This is what we do here in Ventura.
Beautiful. Well, take it away, Dr. Judy, and go get them.
Well, thank you, Daryl, and that's why I appreciate you, Dr. Daryl. And this is really, a love fest. That's why I wore my love hat, and you see it's all beat up from 5 years ago or whenever I was. It was quite a while ago, but when I was taken off an airplane for wearing a red hat that said "We the People," and beat up by a guy named Sergeant Spurlock of the Santa Barbara Police at the Santa Barbara Airport. That was March 10th, 2021, long after this started for me. But at any rate, I next went to Ramona, California. And in Ramona, California, somebody gave me a gift at a talk that I was giving there for a Freedom Network. And they gave me this hat. And it's like, Judy, change the language. So the next time I got on a plane and somebody told me to put a mask on, which I have no problem with my True 47 silver mask, but I'm not going to wear the China mask or anything else. And I'd only wear the True 47 because, of course, there are a lot of dangerous things floating through the air, as we'll talk about today. But at any rate, they just gave me this hat, changed the conversation. So I got on the Love Airlines. That's Godspeak Church's airline. It's called Southwest. And so got on the airline, and she tapped me on the back very strongly when there was still a mask ordinance before there was Leslie Manukian, our hero up in Idaho, who we'll hear from Dr. Michael Karlfeldt soon and talk about that. But at any rate, so she tapped me on the shoulder, and I had it on a chain where I always put the silver mask. And the minute she saw the love hat, she's like, "Dear, when you find the seat that's perfect for you, will you please put the mask on?" I said, "Yes, ma'am." I sat down and opened I found the perfect seat for me. And I opened up my pistachios and I started licking each pistachio because, of course, I love the salt. And then I quickly fell asleep. And when the flight landed like 3 hours later, she tapped me on the shoulder very lightly and said, "Honey, the plane's landing. Would you put up your tray?" I never touched that mask. So when we change the language to love, and we teach that everybody you'll hear today is somebody that listened to me while I was screaming. Meaning just, yeah, screaming like I do. And, and just because I can see what's going to happen. We're the sons of Issachar and daughters, that in biblical speaking, Cherokee Indians are. They saw what had already happened. And yeah, we tend to scream when we see you walking into the flames, rather without the simple faith and knowledge of how easy it is to heal with a little air, with a little water. I mean, if you can't breathe, you can't heal. So this is going to be a fun-filled day, and those healers of the faith were heroes of the faith because they listened to me. Even if I didn't know it at the time, they would get exacerbated, turn around, but they'd come back and say, "See this, Judy," and we're gonna hear that from a lot of beautiful people this morning. And I'm really excited about the entire day, just because we're not going to tell you science stories. We're going to tell you how those heroes listened and then came back to me and said, "Did we get it right, Judy?" And so you'll hear those testimonies. They're not stories, they're history, they're testimonies of how we did and will heal our land and make sure this never happens again.
United we stand, and I think that if we don't stand united, what do you think, Judy? We have to come together, everyone. You've got to drop all the labels. All the labels got to go. They all have to go.
Yep. All one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. That's who we are, regardless of the nations. In this particular nation that I'm living in and was born into, my genealogy, my heritage, is right here on this land back to the 1400s. God only knows how long we were on this land.
Judy, can you, there's going to be a lot of people coming on today and a lot of people that will just start watching the first bit of this. So if I wanted to follow you, okay, and where would I go to your channel or other things before we bring on our first guest, okay?
Well, we are always at therealdrjudy.com, the real Dr. Judy, just like you see it on the screen, .com, and at Dr. Judy A. Mikovits on X and Instagram. You'll see every one of the channels right there. We have accounts on things like Telegram. You will never find me on Facebook. Most of the accounts on Telegram are fraud, so we don't go there. I will never ask you for money, and or anything like that. I never have, and I never will. My only product is my voice and the education, and so all that requires is listening. TheRealDrJudy.com. Most people know my phone number, and I'm happy to take your texts and your calls, and most of you know, like you promised for Monday, I will stay here all day Monday until every question is answered, and we can probably bring back some of our friends and answer them for us. But I'm taking notes, as you know I always do. I'm flanked by my American Dictionary of the English Language from 1828, Noah Webster, and I've got the Founder's Bible. So we're ready to go, and can't wait for this day.
Who's first up on deck?
I believe our first up on deck is Dr. Michael Carlfeld, and I saw him. I saw him back here, but we're a little early for him, according to my schedule. No, he's 11:20. So let's bring him up a little bit early. So hey, I can't read.
I don't mind being early.
Nothing like being early, Michael.
No,
But
no. Well,
see,
yeah. See, you're ready. You got your terpenes and everything
Michael
going.
usually makes me coffee. Yeah, got everything going. Got my terpenes, got my purines that we're ready to go. And
Yeah.
Michael usually makes, and actually his beautiful wife Misty usually makes me a nice French press of great organic coffees for the morning when she knows how slowly I wake up my brain. So I'll go ahead and we'll go ahead and get going early, and I'll introduce you. And the way I'm going to introduce everyone is, you know, what I know about you, and that's the way I met you is your beautiful wife, Misty. And I had no idea because, of course, we use different names when we don't want to get our poor husbands in trouble. And Misty with Health Freedom Idaho, she was right there in Los Angeles in a courthouse with Candace S. David, right in the middle of where I was dragged into a jail about 5 years earlier, and it was PTSD. And there was a black guy there named Travis Middleton who I'd never heard of before. So I call it, okay, three white women in a hotel room with a black man. Uh, this must be an extraordinary man. So when I met you, I found indeed you are extraordinary man, and your wife is blessed, and I'm blessed that I met both you and her. So just love everything you're doing to heal there in Boise, Idaho. So I thought I'd give you the time to tell everybody how we're just going to continue that 5-year journey.
Well, thank you, Dr. Judy, and it's we've had so many discussions, Dr. Judy and I, at the end of the day, and it's always I feel like my brain is hurting after each discussion because it has to expand so much. There's so much knowledge, and we have some exciting projects that we are working together on, and in regards to my focus. I'm a naturopathic doctor, been doing it for almost 40 years, and but a heavy focus on integrative oncology. Yeah, I have this book that I wrote, A Better Way to Treat Cancer. Yeah, it's a 500 page. If you have a hard time falling asleep, then that will help you. But it's about shifting the paradigm in regards to cancer, and I think that is so important because we're always in this kind of war against cancer, and here we don't really understand, what cancer truly is, and how to work on it. So I put together a little bit of a slideshow here. Am I able to share? Okay,
Yes.
great. So let me put this up here. Great.
And I'll just say, Michael, oh, great, you're on there. But this is what my pastor, Rob McCoy, says. Wait a minute, you're putting stretch marks on your brain, on my brain. So that's at the point where he has to regroup. So stretch marks on the brain, that's my job.
Yeah, and that's the beauty is to have someone like Dr. Judy in your corner with that immense expertise, and so that we can understand, this challenge, this pandemic that we're truly dealing with, called cancer, and so here I want to kind of go beyond chemo, because obviously we dealt with chemo, the traditional oncology route, and it hasn't been working. So we need, look at new, more intelligent, more targeted cancer therapies. We've seen the cancer trend; it's not moving in a good direction. We got, as you can see, it's just increasing. It is truly a pandemic, and especially with the introduction of this, so-called, vaccine, it has really accelerated everything. We're seeing, the turbo cancers where people are essentially being diagnosed and then, dead within just a few months, and it's been really sad what I see. So we need to really bring all hands on deck and really understand what this is, and face it on, more on an intelligent level, because we know that the establishment is just going to use this as a way to control people, and so we need to understand it on our side in order to be able to reclaim and keep our freedom, as sovereign individuals. So we know traditional cancer therapy, the chemo, radiation, surgery. I mean, it destroys the immune system. It is cancer causing in itself. And what people don't understand is that when you go in, do the chemo, and you shrink the tumor, they don't understand that it's only a certain section of cancer that is being, a certain subpopulation of the cancer cells that are being impacted. So you're thinking then that, look, chemo is working, but essentially it is just, it is just selecting a certain group that it's shrinking. And it is not the complete solution, because, studies show that the traditional oncology care essentially increases your life span, for people living beyond 5 years by 2 to 3%. So of all the people receiving traditional oncology care, if they did nothing, they would live, past 5 years, maybe, 98% of the time. So it doesn't really add any longevity value. And also we know that it also activates cancer stem cells, and we're going to talk about that a little bit as well. And also then the surviving cancer cells, when you do traditional oncology care, they become then intelligent and become resistant. So frequently the oncologist will say, oh, this chemo worked, so let's do it again, which is a worse mistake, because what you have left are then cancer cells that are resistant to that therapy. And we also know that chemo only goes after then the fast growing cells, and about half of them are slow. So again, which means it's not going to hit all the cancer cells. And the interesting thing, every woman actually has sleeper cancer cell in her bone marrow after a breast cancer diagnosis. So you have all these kind of sleeper cancer cells, and cancer stem cells, and we have slow growing cells. We have so many things going on that is not accounted for in traditional oncology. Then we have the issue of hypoxia. So we're using chemo, we're using radiation. These are oxidative therapies, and with that you need oxygen. And we know that within a tumor, the oxygen content is very low. So in order to then bring in oxidative therapy to kill the tumor when there's no oxygen there is also a reason why it's not working very well. And so here we go. So that's why it's very important that we then bring in kind of a multifactorial therapy. So it becomes a key that we then hit it from all different angles at the same time and understand the behavior of cancer, because it is adapting and it becomes resistant to therapy. And cancer, we fully don't understand it. We have inclinations and we have understanding, but there's not a complete picture. And also we know that the treated cancer, it signals actually precancerous cells, what to do in order to be able to resist whatever therapy that it's receiving. So that's another way that it becomes very resistant to therapy. And so this is very similar to viral infected cells that uses interferon to signal other neighboring cells to create these antiviral enzymes. So and we also have what's called a TNF blockade, where the immune system actually becomes, or the cancer becomes invisible to the immune system. So cancer is very intelligent, very smart, and so we really need to give it the props instead of just thinking we can just hit it with this one bullet and everything is going to change. So again, lack of progression in medical oncology. So we have the resistance to chemotherapy we're talking about, but then we have the side effects then from all these toxic drugs, which makes a person even weaker at the end of the day. So we kind of assault the body, we shrink the tumor, but we just shrink the cancer cells that the chemo will impact. Then we have selected a certain subset of cancer cells that are still living. Cancer stem cells still there. The sleeper cells, the slow growing, all of these are still there. But now we have a body that is weaker post-therapy, meaning that we've been beating up their immune system, we've been beating up the liver, their kidneys, and so now you have cancer still there, but you have no immune system to deal with it. So that's a challenge I see again and again, is that you have people going through traditional oncology and they're just not able to then continue the journey. They have that initial successful win, but the long haul, they are very challenged. And again, limited targeting, so the body, you may not know this, but if we get 5% of the chemo into the cancer cells, we are lucky. Then we are phenomenal. So the delivery of chemo to the cancer cells is very, very limited, which means that we got 95 of all these toxic drugs that are impacting the rest of the body. destroying it and making us weaker and having a tougher time than to, continue the battle, so to say. And we know that chemo cannot kill all cells. There's no chemo, no therapy that can kill all of them. It's an impossibility. So that creates a need for more innovative therapies to look at something different than what we were being fed through traditional oncology. So what is cancer? That's a question that we're still trying to figure out. Is genetic condition, metabolic condition, infectious condition, parasites, fungus, viral, garbage dump, survival mechanism. From my point of view, it's a little bit of all of that, and they all play a role. And so that's why it's important then to look at it from more of a complex point of view. So one of the things, I'm gonna just grab I'm not sure if I have my. Can somebody give me like a 5 minutes, thumbs up so I know that? Good. So we have the cancer ecosystem. So it's important to understand that we don't just deal with one type of cell in a tumor. It's a mixture of a whole horde of different cells, endothelial, hematopoietic, stromal, and all of these influences the function of the tumor. And also this can then give it the survival ability because it has so many different components to it. So there's so much intelligence that exists. It's a very, very complex ecosystem that really enhances what's called that tumor fitness. And then we have, within the tumor, we don't only have all these bunch of different cells, but then we have different subclones. So a tumor is not it's not homogeneous. It is. You have different subclones. One section you have this behavior, and then another section is a different behavior. So it's like you get a bunch of different types of cancer throughout that tumor that you're looking at. So it's important that in addition to having a variety of a bunch of different cells, we also have a variety of different neighborhoods, so to say, within the tumor. And all of these different neighborhoods can then, because it is diverse, then you are essentially, when you bring in chemo, you are creating then a survival advantage, to the subclones that are then resistant. So you're killing then the ones that are easy to kill, but the ones that are resistant, they are the ones that are now going to be kind of the majority of that tumor. So, we all know about kind of the issue with antibiotic resistance, so that when you do a lot of antibiotics, all of a sudden bacteria exist that are now resistant to that antibiotic. And it's the same with cancer. So we selectively, by using these therapies, we're selectively allowing the population of subpopulations of cancer to be the dominant ones. And then we have something called tumor microenvironment. And that is then not the tumor in itself, but it's the environment around that. And we know that environment really controls a lot of the behavior of the tumor. So if that environment is filled with infections, a lot of heavy metals, very inflammatory, that's going to make that tumor much more aggressive. So if we then clean up that environment and shift that environment, we're also then able to shift the behavior of the tumor and make it less aggressive, more responsive. So the tumor microenvironment becomes a key. And what's interesting is that the tumor microenvironment can then control whether cancer cells can actually shift between being a cancer stem cell or a normal cell. So it actually has the ability to shift depending on what it's exposed to. And the tumor microenvironment helps to control that quite a bit. So us then impacting the tumor microenvironment, we can then really impact on the tumor in itself. And then we have the cancer stem cells. So there's no therapy out there that's able to, the traditional oncology therapy out there that's able to kill cancer stem cells. So essentially, what happens is that, they're all kind of sleeping, you're going through therapy, and then you're done, you ring your bell, no evidence of disease, but all the cancer stem cells are still there. In fact, there's evidence showing that the chemo, radiation, and surgery actually activates these cancer stem cells. They become more active. And I kind of liken it to when our normal stem cells, they're there to heal them the tissue. And so what happens with that is that, we have an injury, stem cells go there, heals it. So if we then use radiation or chemo or surgery, to go after the tumor, the cancer stem cells are going to be activated because it's going to want to heal that area. So it is really important that if you do traditional oncology, that you also bring in therapies that controls cancer stem cells, and there are integrative therapies that can do that. And then we have an epigenome. So
2-minute warning. You're hitting all the buttons, Michael. 2-minute warning.
2 minutes warning. Thank you, Judy.
Oh, this is beautiful.
Yeah. And so at the end of this, the conclusion is that just going after the cancer using chemo, radiation is not the solution. So it becomes understanding that the terrain is the key. That is where we control the behavior of the tumor. That's how we control the epigenome. We can control the changes in the cancer stem cells. We can support the immune system. So the terrain becomes a key. And this is a therapy. We do many, many therapies here at the center. But photodynamic therapy is one of the ones that I love, using light to go after cancer stem cells and go after tumors. So here's a little bit more information about the photodynamic. It's a fascinating therapy. And so thank you so much for having me here. I really appreciate it. I know it's hard to bring in all of this in 20 minutes, but that's what they do. They put pressure on us, and then we give you the pearls.
Well, you actually did give us a great deal of pearls. This is just absolutely beautiful, because that's what it's not the terrain. You just cut half of the arguments right there in that beautiful talk, because it's which terrain, which microenvironment, and which stem cell are you targeting. And this way we've developed over the last 40 years. For me, D-Day was June 6th. 43 years with Frank Rossetti is not a picnic, but I think I learned something. And you just laid this up perfectly for a layup for our next speaker, Dr. Aleem, to come in and talk to you about interferon. And so thank you, Michael. We'll bring in Dr. Aleem here. I see him on the screen, and I hope you'll stick around, but I hope you play tennis and enjoy Sunday Fun Day with your beautiful family as well.
Thank you so much.
So I see Dr. Aleem here today, and thank you for coming in and seeing that beautiful presentation. He talked about type 1 interferons. So probably among the colleagues, and I'll call you a colleague, and we just met a few years ago, the introduction story with type 1 interferon. My first job at the National Cancer Institute was, in fact, to purify bovine interferon. So I know you're going to tell us a lot about that. But I wanted to say that a few years ago in 2022, I was on a show, a podcast, and somebody came in. It was Stu Peters' show. And Stu Peters was showing me a Sam Donaldson interview that you did when you're a very handsome man now, but you were even more handsome young man. But you were a lot like me. And Sam Donaldson was quite aggressive and attacked you in this call. So I was backstage going like this as Stu, a lovely man who I adore, repeated the narrative from 40 years earlier. And he said, okay, Dr. Judy's shaking her head violently. Let me bring this and say, what's going on? And so we sat down and have a conversation. He deleted the whole thing and came back and showed how the news, because what you said is you're hurting your brothers and sisters with your Paximune, your bovine interferon, your only true vaccine, the true immunization, I should say. And you said, well, if that's what they think, fuck them. So, and, and I knew that was the mistake I made. Oh,
Yeah, I lost you.
thank you, Dr. Leem. Take it away.
Okay. Well, how are you today, Dr. Judy?
Well, I'm wonderful. It's good to see your beautiful smile. Again,
Thank you.
I
Thank you.
met
Good
you
to see you as
recently.
well. And for
Okay.
people who don't know, I just personally met Dr. Mikovits just, about a month ago in Compton, California. We were at a conference sponsored by Risa Islam and his intellectual power. But we've known each other, at a distance for many years. And while you were doing the battles on the inside of NIH back in those days, I was doing my thing on the outside. And I used to see your name on research papers here and there, but I never knew who you were. And so it's a great honor to have met you in person and to be a part of this wonderful program that you're doing right now. Now, my involvement with the interferon really began from the community. See, I'm a community-based physician. So you're a PhD and Dr. Christina Parks, so you're the hard scientist in the laboratories and you're figuring out the biochemical pathways. Meanwhile, I'm out in the community. I'm trying to get people better. And so I had a patient who identified himself as being HIV positive. And he had heard me give lectures about the whole epidemic, the political ramifications, the depopulation agenda, and all of that kind of stuff. But I had never actually had a patient. So one day I'm looking up and here he is in front of me. Okay, I heard what you said, Dr. Muhammad, about AZT and all the rest of it, but what's your alternative? And I was stunned. I didn't have an alternative. So long story short, one of the things that I've learned over the years is that doctors should listen more to their patients. And so this young man, he started bringing me articles from the alternative media and whatnot. And one thing caught my attention. He was talking about something, or he showed me an article about Chemron. And what is this? And I read the claims that were being made from Chemron, and I was researching the literature, couldn't find anything. And so eventually I took that information to Minister Farrakhan. And because he had asked me, he said, well, what is your solution to HIV? What should we do? And I said to him, as far as I know, there is no answer to it. He said, oh no, there has to be an answer. He says every problem that God puts in the world, he also places the solution, but it's up to us to find the solution. And sometimes he places it in the strangest place. So long story short, I find myself in Nairobi, Kenya, at the Kenya Medical Research Institute, talking to Dr. David Koesh, who had a crude form of interferon, and he had published in the East African Medical Journal a study that showed, I believe it was 38 out of 39 patients had had a serial deconversion from HIV using this crude powder that contains some interferon. And so with that good news, my colleague and I, Dr. Barbara Justice, we brought that back to the United States. We had a public rally at All Souls Church here in Washington, D.C. About 1,200 people came out to get the good news that there actually was a cure for AIDS in Africa. But the problem was this. Everybody that goes to Africa comes back with some story about some fantastic thing that they saw over in Africa. And nobody is going to accept the research done by African doctors. Mm-hmm. So Dr. Barbara Justice and I decided, well, we have to do our own research study. And so we did that first study with 50 patients. And we actually duplicated what Dr. David Koech had done in Kenya, that we had a 92% success rate in reversing the signs and symptoms of HIV and AIDS. And occasionally, we had a zero deconversion, which is to say that a person that was testing positive for HIV now became negative. And I presented that first bona fide AIDS cure in 1995 at the Million Man March. And so that was my introduction to interferon science and its clinical application. And I found out that number one, it's very effective, it's very safe, it has almost zero side effects, and is very, very acceptable to the community.
That's fabulous. And how interesting that I didn't know some of that, most of that history. And you said 1995, and you showed it in Washington, D.C., and to 1,200 people in a church. So my PhD was defended in 1992, and actually November 14th, 1991. And that's when Magic Johnson was all over the cover of everything. And all my thesis committee did, which the first job, interferon, all the way through from June 10th, 1980, my first day of doing that at Fort Detrick. And I knew that only God. So human interferon doesn't work on another human. Bovine interferon, everything that God gave you for food will work. And when I say work, means serve you in nature the way God in nature formed your innate immune system to see patterns. So isn't it interesting, all the way back in Washington, D.C., where I grew up since 1968, born in Michigan. We'll talk about that later. Isn't it interesting that interferon? I think of, you mentioned beautiful Dr. Barbara Justice. I think of Paula Pitha. I think of, so we were, like you say, we were in the middle of the medical industrial complex there at Fort Detrick, and I was purifying from cow snot. Literally, I mean, that's all you do, blow a virus in a cow nose. And I thought, how great my job. I'm curing cancer, and then I'll take a year off and go back to medical school. And that was 1980. When March 31st, 1980, interferon was on the big if on the cover of Time magazine.
That's right.
And how beautiful that you mentioned the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, and just because he did the exact same thing in COVID. He called us all together, Bobby, Jack Lyons Weiler, you were there, many doctors, some of that aren't with us anymore. Dr. Noah Schwinder, Dr. Tony Barks, and others were in that room December 18th. Riza, Tony Muhammad, you mentioned, were in that room December 18th, 2020. And he said, okay, based on your knowledge, he did the exact same thing, 40 years later. Based on your knowledge, do I do not recommend this shot to my people? That day, he saved 5 million or more followers of the Nation of Islam.
Absolutely.
Because he always follows God, always. Yeah. God gave us a solution. All we have to do is listen. So how amazing that, I mean, it was so great to meet you a couple of weeks ago. And this is why, knowing the history, knowing the truth. And I'm just so grateful to you for, coming on and telling us the rest of this, or zero deconversion. Yeah, that's what we did with Magic Johnson. The lie continued that because he was seropositive. When you test positive, it wasn't a PCR test, it was an antibody test. So right there, November 14th, 1991, they said to this kid shaking in her shoes, in front of the experts that were going to perpetrate this fraud, why don't I just say David Ho in New York? David Ho. So you give the answer to somebody else. And so all they said was, based on your thesis, would they or would he not die of AIDS? And I looked at them like they were moroni, because they were moroni, and said, he won't even get AIDS. Did you not read this? You've had 3 months, read it. All you need is an innate immune system and the appropriate tumor microenvironment, as Michael Karlfeldt just showed us, no, very few of the cells in any tumor, it's an ecosystem. And your God gave you the immune response cells. And I know I see Jerry Norskog's coming up later, the